their mega warehouse and saying, as a distributor, I'm going to want to be able to distribute all of these items. I want to stock these items and be a distributor for you. Or you could be a contractor and be selecting them. Or you could be an individual consumer walking into a store and saying, I want to buy that, and that. I want to take them with me. Or maybe I can only take 3 of these things with me, and I need that other thing to be shipped to me because you don't happen to have it in this physical.
Growing a business requires a holistic approach that extends beyond sales and marketing. This approach needs alignment among people, processes, and technologies. So if you're a business owner, operations, or finance leader looking to learn growth strategies from your peers and competitors, you're tuned into the right podcast. Welcome to the WBS Podcast, where scalable growth using business systems is our #1 priority. Now, here is your host, Sam Gupta.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the WBS Podcast. I'm Sam Gupta, your host and principal consultant at independent ERP and digital transformation consulting firm Elevate IQ. Retail industry is very unique with its architecture. You have layers such as B2B and B2C. The B2C and FMCG industries have always had very unique architecture with their needs for the POS being the most important. The role of ERP was limited to just financial reporting. The order management layer always consisted of the OMS in combination of WMS and TMS with the POS forming the fabric for inventory, allocation, and fulfillment. Now, with the needs of eCommerce, things are a bit challenging as the architecture needs to change. So how is Kibo changing that? In today's episode, we invited Mark Wright from Kibo Commerce, one of the hottest vendors in the microservices-based OMS solution. We discussed the strengths and weaknesses of Kibo along with its target market. We also discussed the latest and greatest features that Kibo has been working on in the past quarter. With that, let's get to the conversation. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's show. And if you're joining for the first time, this is a brand new series that we are just launching. And this is going to be quarterly updates for the enterprise software vendors. And for today, we have a very, very, very interesting offering in the headless community. And this is going to be Kibo's super, super hot technology in general. So I'm super pumped in reviewing this with you. With this series, we are going to take slightly different approach overall. In this particular case, unlike other series, we are going to be giving the opportunity to our enterprise software friends to be able to provide their updates. Primarily, the focus is going to be each quarter we are going to be bringing them, and their role is going to be to provide the updates. Since this is the first time Kibo is coming here, so we are going to be asking them to provide a little overview on the Kibo itself, where that fits in the architecture. So we are going to have a lot of fun. Before we do that, we are going to start with our intros. If you don't know me, Sam Gupta, your host and principal at Elevate IQ. Elevate IQ is the independent ERP, e-commerce, and digital transformation consulting firm. On that note, I am going to move to my friend Mark for his intro. Mark, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah. Good morning, good afternoon, depending on where you are today around the world. My name is Mark Wright. I lead the pre-sales organization at Kibo Commerce. I've been part of that team for quite a long time, over a decade. Kibo Commerce is a digital commerce, order management, and subscription commerce vendor in the market, and really excited to be participating in this show with you today, Sam, and with the audience here.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for being here, Mark. And if you're in the audience and joining for the first time, make sure you guys post your questions and comments. We typically try to cover them during the show, and your questions are going to take the priority in general. On that note, if you are sort of warming up there, I would love to know your locations, where you are joining from. If you could post them in the chat box, I'll appreciate that. So, Mark, let's start with the sort of the first question or the background overall, right, from the Kibo perspective. And I don't know whether you remember or not, we sort of reviewed the OMS LinkedIn post that we were talking about yesterday. And in that, we were talking about how OMS platforms sort of differ. And in my mind, I mean, OMS could mean a lot of different things depending upon the industry that you are playing with. And in my mind, the role of OMS is going to be to serve that B2C layer, because typically when you look at the ERP systems, they are not going to be as good at the nuances of the B2C. But now these ERP systems are sort of pushing the B2B orders to your OMS layer as well, right? So it's overall very interesting the way the architecture is evolving, and there are many different OMS options out there in the market, and they are evolving a lot as well. So I think it's going to be a journey. So Mark, overall, let's say if you were to provide a little context in terms of where OMS fits, which industry it is going to be a fit, and what problem Kibo is trying to solve. Do you want to start talking about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to. It's a good topic, Sam. So brands, retailers, distributors, manufacturers, those are the types of customers that we aim to serve. All of those have some form of ERP and other back office systems, and they all want to offer exceptional customer experiences, and they want to be able to have their business perform as efficiently as possible. And be as agile as they can be to adapt to changing market conditions and things of that nature. And so Kibo, as a holistic, unified commerce engine that has an order management at the core and subscription capabilities with it, we see ourselves uniquely poised in the market for high growth brands, for retailers, those that have complex order servicing needs, complex customer needs, high customer expectations, and are struggling to sort of keep pace with those demands of their customers while being able to kind of maintain their margins with, trying to modernize and keep their legacy systems, adapting to kind of meet those needs, those desires. What we find is that, ERP does a great job at what it does well. And ERP is something that everybody has in place. And it has some capabilities to be able to serve some of these needs in the market, but also it can be difficult to sort of instrument them to make them happen, because ERP wasn't necessarily designed to do that particular component with excellence. And so enter a platform like ours that sort of sits between other back office systems like ERP or master product catalog management, and then front end commerce experiences, in-store experiences if you're a retailer, and sort of orchestrating not only the capability to be able to offer some modern experiences to customers, but also be a conduit for high availability of real-time data, so that we can do a really, really good job of helping a customer understand what the current situation is and be able to help them convert in the most efficient and effective way possible. So yeah, we find ourselves serving those customers like retailers, like brands that may or may not have a retail presence, like distributors that have a complex distribution network and are wanting to serve their customers well, and like branded manufacturers who are potentially engaging retail partners, vendor drop shippers, other things of that nature. We have a pretty good track record of success in a couple of unique verticals. One of them is fashion. One of them is hardware and home improvement. We have some great success with sporting goods as well, and we're serving many verticals, but those are three that I just kind of want to call out that we have had particular success in.
Okay, amazing background there. Thank you so much, Mark, for that. So I'm going to quickly touch on the comments that we have in the audience. So Larry, thank you so much for joining in. If you have any questions, obviously, feel free to post. By the way, follow Larry Lung. It's Larry Leung. And I don't even know if I'm pronouncing your name right. So thank you so much for being here. He's saying, while I'm not that close to this space, I like to stay current. Yes, you definitely do, Larry. Thank you so much for joining. And we have Rachida Ben Salam. And again, I probably butchered the name. Sorry. Please follow Rachida as well. It's Racheda. Ben is the middle name. Bensellam. Good evening, Sam and Mark. Greetings from Belgium. Oh my goodness. So we have the global audience here, and I think we have Dudy as well. Dudy is joining from Israel. So Dudy Wiseman, Dudywizman. What he presenting us, we are presenting Kibo. Kibo is the OMS. OMS is the order management system. So thank you so much for joining, Duty. Now, going back to your comment, Mark, overall from the some of the industry layers that you had mentioned, you had also mentioned a layer about how the OMS systems differ from ERP. I'll tell you my experience, and obviously we are going to have a lot of ERP friends in the audience as well. As you know, this has always been slightly biased towards ERPs in general. I mean, I'm talking about this show, right? So when you look at the ERP, okay, ERP has a place to play. ERP systems were really designed for B2B. They were never designed for B2C experience. Now let's go back to the legacy architecture overall, how the retail value chain started. So we had retailers, we had distributors, and we had manufacturers in the traditional sense. Okay, but now the lines are blurring. Everybody's sort of trying to do everything. The way market is behaving, brands are launching their DTC channel, distributors are trying to launch their private label or whatever, and then retailers are trying to manufacture. So things are literally all over the place, and that's the complexity of the business model that we are talking about in the traditional sense. Okay, when you look at the architecture of these retailers, okay, since retail is the major component for OMS in my mind, the way I like to think about this. Okay, so the way retailers operated, they just had the brick and mortar channel. Traditionally, they didn't have to worry about e-commerce. Obviously, e-commerce is what is complicating everything, right, in general. So they had brick and mortar. And if you look at the traditional legacy architecture, when you are looking at IBMs of the world, NCRs of the world, the way they had their POS layer was always connected. If you go to your Best Buy as of today, and they are going to be looking up for the product, they can do really good job in looking up in the product, which is going to be the store next door. But if you ask them, okay, can I tie in my inventory with the e-commerce channel? It's going to be a nightmare. It's really hard to do. They are going to say, that's probably not going to be right, because the e-commerce channel typically does not talk to your POS layer. So the whole POS layer was very special, because that did the heavy lifting, 80% of the revenue in my mind for most of the brick and mortar stores. But now with the omni-channel unified experience, things are all over the place, because e-commerce is becoming very critical. And when you talk about the advanced customer experience, I think you use the word advanced, right? So we are talking about buy online, pick up in store. Okay, that's a rocket science in my mind, because because the inventory does not talk to each other. So based on this architecture, maybe you want to layer in a little bit more overall in terms of the architecture, and if you can provide any sort of context, stories, that'll be super helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. If only point of sale understood virtual stores as well, right? And
exactly.
Not just brick and mortar stores. No, you're talking about something that became exceptionally painful for these retailers during the pandemic too, right? When we all had to stay indoors, and retail stores were shuttered, and suddenly those retailers are going, if I have not really already established a strong online presence, this is the only way these customers are going to be buying from me in this time period. And so that was really sort of a trigger for a lot of these retailers to actually really kind of evaluate how I bridge online and offline, if you will, experiences like that. One of our customers, and I'll tell you a story about how these things sort of have worked together through the lens of one of our customers. Ace Hardware is a co-op. They kind of act like a franchise, but they're actually a co-op business model. Over 5,500 independently owned and operated locations that have subscribed to the Ace Hardware network and have local hardware stores that are branded as Ace Hardware. What Ace needed to do was to be able to capture customer purchase demand in a digital channel, marry that with localized customer experience. Now, if you think about Ace Hardware, if some of you may or may not have ever been into one of these stores, and especially those of you that are international, maybe not. But one of the things that Ace does particularly well is they have really, really, really good, strong in-store customer experiences. They hire staff that is very knowledgeable. Often these are like retired contractors, or retired plumbers, or maybe even active in those trades. Those are the types of people they have in the store. And so you get very, very good quality service, one-on-one interaction with those people when you go into the store. They wanted that sort of, and they know your name too, because these stores are everywhere around the country, and their clientele frequents them because they get such good service. So they needed a hyper localized experience in a digital channel like this that would be able to help a customer understand what they can do in the store, help a customer understand what inventory is available in the store, and bring all those things together. So what Ace Hardware did is they said, hey, look, digital channel, point of sale channel, and then offline ordering channels. And you think about Ace Hardware, you've got contractors and other folks that are purchasing from them, so they have B2B ordering experiences that they need too. Complex pricing through all of this, because you've got specialized B2B level pricing. You have independent stores setting their own product mixes and setting their own inventory levels and setting their own prices. All of that has to sort of come together and be commingled here, and we need that hyper localized shopping experience in the same way that you would walk into a store and say, hey, I'm interested in a grill, and that might be a Weber grill. Well, here is all the inventory that we have in stock. This is the exact same experience that they would get in a mobile app, right? Inventory is being considered. That must be considered whenever we're searching for a product, because why would I want to inform a customer about a product that we don't have in stock and maybe won't be having in stock for quite some time? That's generally a bad customer experience. And so inventory has to be informed inside of the search. And then we can further refine by saying, well, what's physically in my store that I am associated to right now? This is generating the exact same experience online that we had in the store. And it's just an example of why commerce and order management working together in tandem with the point of sale, which is where we're getting pricing from the store, which is where we're getting inventory from the store, and maybe some other, centralized product catalog from ERP. And ERP may also be giving us, what is in warehouses and other places like that. All of that intelligence has to come together right now to be able to tell a customer, we've got one of these left. It's in the local store. You can buy it online and come pick it up in store within an hour. Does that make sense? I mean, this is an exceptional customer experience that Ace Hardware is driving, that they have really found the value of commerce order management coming together between those systems. And I don't know a single customer who isn't looking for, a single consumer like me, who isn't looking for that type of an experience. Have you run into them, Sam?
So let's unpack a little bit. I have definitely, run into them, and this is a great example, Mark. Okay, so let's unpack a little bit. Okay, so number one, the experience that you are talking about, is this primarily from the OEM perspective, or is it more from their distributor perspective? My understanding is that you are not only helping the OEM, but you are helping with the commerce experience of their entire distribution channel. They are going to have their own web front. So whatever are we looking at here? Are we looking at the distributor storefront, or are we looking at the OEM storefront? And then the traffic is going to go to distributor. So do you want to unpack a little bit there?
Yeah, great question. So right now I'm looking at the consumer website of acehardware.com. That is something that Kibo happens to be powering. And everything soup to nuts in this site, whether it be search or product catalog or inventory availability, it's store, localized experience is all being powered by Kibo here. I could log in as a B2B buyer, and then I would get a unique experience based on me identifying who I am from a single centralized portal here, if you will. And so what they have are B2B buyers and B2C buyers, right, that are coming to the same place. And so B2B buying is very, very similar to B2C buying in the way that I'm adding items to a list that I'm going to be purchasing at some point in the future, or a shopping cart, or something of that, if you will, especially if you think about it of a small B2B buyer, right? Like maybe it's a is a contractor and they have maybe 3 or 4 purchasers within their, they build homes or something, or they remodel homes, something to that effect. Am I getting to your question here about your?
Yeah. Most certainly. If you want, I can build some more, and then probably you can respond more if you like. So you mentioned the B2B versus B2C experience, right? In that also there is another layer there. Okay. So obviously the B2B, when you talk about B2B, my understanding of that B2B buyer is going to be of the distributor, of the OEM. In this particular case, OEM is going to be Ace Hardware, and then they are going to have thousands of distributors. They are
Right.
doing their business as well. So in this particular case, the distributor is acting as the B2B buyer. The OEM is going to be Ace Hardware. So I don't know what is going to be the distribution experience. Are they simply going to buy and then going to push it to their web front, or are they utilizing your web front for their e-commerce experience as well? I don't know. Am I making sense here?
You're making sense. That doesn't happen to be Ace Hardware's model, but it could be if they wanted it to be. So Kibo is not involved on the distributor's web fronts side of things, but we would be happy to be. We just aren't yet. So this almost operates as though this digital platform here operates as though you're physically walking into their mega warehouse and saying, as a distributor, I'm going to want to be able to distribute all of these items. I want to stock these items and be a distributor for you. Or you could be a contractor and be selecting them. Or you could be an individual consumer walking into a store and saying, I want to buy that, and that. I want to take them with me. Or maybe I can only take 3 of these things with me, and I need that other thing to be shipped to me because you don't happen to have it in this physical location. That's the experience that we're supporting here. So we are supporting Ace as the OEM in your vernacular there with their selling motion, their digital selling motion, and we're engaging every single node where the inventory exists, including where it's not arrived to yet, future inventory, and making that available in an intelligent way to say, here's what you could buy and here's the price that it's going to be.
Very, very, very interesting. So, I'm going to add one more layer. So thank you so much for the clarification that this is not going to be a distribution, because sometimes that could be confusing for some people when they are thinking about the whole experience. So here we are looking at the B2B journey, and B2B is going to be the distributor. And we are also looking at the e-commerce experience that's going to be for the OEMs. So are you guys powering the POS layer as well? Or do they have their own sort of POS network, and you are simply trying to feed the inventory and the data that the POS layer is going to be needing? So are they using your POS layer, or are they using another POS layer which you are feeding the data to?
Yeah. So the way that Ace Hardware works, and I'll contrast that to the way that some others do, but the way Ace Hardware, again, independently owned and operated locations, it's a co-op. So they are a buying group, these independent mom and pop shops in some cases, that they might be operating their own POS, but they are incentivized to sort of be operating a POS that Ace gets specialized pricing for, and you can go and install. So we are not involved in the funneling of data from other back office systems in headquarters out to POS. We are not operating as their POS either, even though this is technically a point of sale. We are not in the retail store acting that way on their behalf. This interface and the underlying commerce services, and that's what I want to keep reminding the audience of, is that what you need are the capabilities, and then how you want to apply that and use that within your ecosystem is where the magic really happens, and where you can get really, really creative. The underlying commerce services underpinning whatever type of a user experience or a user interface that would be appropriate for the buying process is what it can be used to centralize. That's what really a POS is at its core. I'm capturing sales. I'm not trying to minimize it, but that's essentially what's happening. That's why it's there, right? And so things like cash wrap in a cash drawer and other things of that nature, no, we're not getting involved into all of that. But the underlying commerce services, it can take an offline POS order, right, for something that maybe is not in stock at that local store, and send it to Kibo, and we make a determination based on business rules that the business has set up around how we're going to allocate inventory from no matter where it exists, including another store that's independently owned and operated, can be shipping it out of their on-hand inventory as well. So Kibo is not getting involved in the POS. We have a really, really strong partnership with the POS where we are taking inventory feeds in near real time, or as real time as they can give it to us. Some are better at that than others. We'll take inventory feeds from other back office or independent drop shippers or the warehouse management system. We can take it from anywhere it might need to come. The beauty of Kibo, or an OMS in this case, is that it's bringing all that together in real time and providing that in real time to whatever the purchase channel is, including the local in-store POS, as long as it can come ask us for it promptly.
Very interesting. So here, let's say if you were to draw a comparison, and obviously people are sort of thinking in their head that, okay, what is going to be my comparable here? Let's say if you were to compare this with ERP, obviously that's probably going to be the next logical choice.
Yeah.
Obviously POS layer is going to be the next logical choice, and the e-commerce platform, because obviously you guys are sort of the e-com plus OMS, and that's why you sort of differ slightly differently, because there are some pure play OMS vendors in the market as well. The only thing they do is POS. So maybe you want to touch on that layer a little bit more as well.
Yeah.
Why it is important to have the e-commerce plus OMS, and if you don't have that, then you are looking at very, very fragile integration. And in my mind, any integration that touches the inventory is always very hard to sort of pull off. So do you want to start with this one?
Sure.
Why it is important to have the e-com plus OMS combination pre-baked,
Sure.
pre-integrated?
Yeah, it's a great topic. And I'm going to switch over to a slide that just sort of illustrates this a little bit. I'll go right back over to where we were.
Yeah.
But commerce and order management being singular is important because they share so much data. They are both reliant on so much of the same data, and they perform very similar activities. An order management system should not just be able to manage orders, it should be able to create them as well, right? Otherwise, it is an order servicing solution, not an order management solution. And so creating an order, commerce has got to do that. Creating an order management's got to do that. Those should be one service that is powering the both of them. They both need inventory data. That should be one source of data, and it should also be one underlying service. That provides the reduction of the amount of integrations that need to be set up. And everybody knows that integration is code word for something I got to pay attention to that it doesn't break, right? Want to make sure that I maintain it and other things. We want to reduce the number of integrations because then we de-risk ourselves in terms of maintaining those. And so what I have on the screen here is the reality of commerce and order management working together. We can provide unique customer experiences across digital places and physical places that is reliant on, the commerce experience is reliant on data that order management has, and it needs to be able to support. And that should be able to be consumed at an individual service level. If all I need in order to accomplish a use case is just inventory, then that you shouldn't have to deploy an entire order management system. You should be able to deploy an inventory available to promise engine. And with our architecture being modular and solution oriented, that is a prepackaged module that can be deployed. Inventory actually requires something like a locations service as well. We got to be able to understand some of the data points. Those things can be deployed in an extremely lightweight, easy, agile fashion, and it is the exact same service that commerce and order management will both use. Now, if I go back to the Ace Hardware example, a tangible, real life right now example of this order management and commerce coming together and the power of it is the fact that when I'm on a product detail page here, well, first of all, I would have only gotten to this page if there was actually stock I could sell, right? And that's important because maybe the last one sold out just 5 seconds ago. Well, if you don't have a real-time inventory service, then you're going to be under delivering on the customer expectation here. I should have never arrived here if we didn't have inventory to sell. And in a retail environment, that can sell really, really fast. The last units in a store, right? We are presented with multiple fulfillment options. Why? Because we want to deliver on a great customer experience, and the stores have the means to be able to do that. Well, not every store does. This centralized location service that commerce and order management both understand, well, it's just one. It's just the understanding, and it is displayed dynamically in an environment like this based on, is the product in stock? How do I make it available? If I was to source it from this particular location, should I be given that option to purchase it in that way, whether that's pickup or delivery from store like with a van, or ship from this particular store? And I should not only know that it's available, but how soon could I get it? So the calculation of when it will be fulfilled as well as when it will be delivered in that case, right? If we're using UPS or DHL or whatever to deliver it. That's why we're getting things like real-time readout of exactly when that inventory is going to be available. That's critical to have inventory data that is right now accurate from the POS, from other back office, from the drop shipper. Like if it wasn't in stock here, how long would it take to ship it from a drop shipper or from, the West Coast warehouse or something like that? Those things all have to play into the customer experience here. And then we take it a level deeper with ACE and we go, okay, well, what about if we want the value-added service in the store? How does that affect customer expectation? How does that affect our delivery of that? Yeah. Simply adding that, we're automatically making a determination. Is inventory available for me to actually go ahead and assemble? Is it available at this location still because maybe they do or don't offer assembly? And when would I promise it to a customer? Well, maybe tomorrow now instead of today because we need to have the time to be able to go fulfill that.
Okay, so very interesting. So I want to touch on one point that is obviously mentioned a couple of times, and I want to make sure that listeners are able to follow along, and that is related to the POS. You mentioned that, they are not necessarily using this as the POS, or you don't sort of provide the pre-baked POS experience, right? So they are probably going to be using, I don't know what they use, maybe NCR or whatever, right? Something they might be using. And
right.
Typically that is going to have its own inventory ledger, okay? The way the POS experience works.
Right.
So I don't know if they have sort of the real-time inventory connection from their POS. If they don't, then inventory is not going to be real time.
That's correct.
So do you want to touch a little bit on that? How is this real time for the POS, and which POS are we talking about? Are we talking about the POS of the distributor, or are we talking about the POS of ACE? Because that's going to be different as well, right?
Yeah. In the customer example they're looking at today, we're talking about OEM. We're talking about ACE.
Yeah.
They have a point of sale that they did update and enhance so that they could provide near real-time inventory. That's critical in order to be able to drive this experience. You're pointing out what should be obvious to all of us. Well, if inventory data isn't real-time from the source, then how can I provide this type of an experience to the customer? That's the million-dollar question.
Yep.
And ultimately, that requires everybody to sort of play along. Now, if Kibo could go into and sort of pull that out of OMS, we would be able to take that on, provided they have a means to be able to leverage our inventory services instead of POS. But sometimes those, especially with a legacy POS that's that's steeped in sort of older technology, they just don't simply have something like a highly performant API, like a REST API, to be able to interact with our highly performant REST API and trigger things as soon as they sell. So you think about Sam going into Ace Hardware, buying a hammer, it bringing up on the point of sale, and him walking out with that. Well, we need to know about that as soon as it's happened, especially if it's in low stock. Now, maybe we only need to know about it, Sam, if it's in low stock. Because if you had 15 left and now we only have 14, well, that's less critical for this type of an experience because, well, we don't need to necessarily know that it's that highly that it's at 14 instead of 15 right now, because what we're trying to give you is an expectation that you are going to be able to purchase it and pick it up right now. It is in stock, so we can reduce the overhead in terms of a point of sale integration to be like, well, when it gets into low stock, or if we're knowing that this is going to be selling rapidly and it's going to be a flash sale type of an experience, then we are going to keep Kibo regularly updated about those things. But usually, and like with ACE, as soon as they have the means to be able to have an API to call Kibo and update inventory, they're pretty much doing it for all SKUs. But at a very minimum, it's sort of under sort of minimum stock thresholds so that we can set customer expectations for in stock versus out of stock.
Okay, amazing comments there. So I'm going to touch on the, some of the audience comments here. By the way, thank you so much, Dave, for joining. Follow Dave Chrysler, DAVECRYSLER. And guys, I want to ask one question. If you're in the audience, whatever comes to your mind when you think of either Kibo or OMS, Do you want to post in the chat box? I'll really appreciate that. On that note, Mark, let's take this conversation to one more layer or another level. Okay. So one of the comments that you mentioned is the micro fulfillment. Okay. And micro fulfillment, when I think of that, it's rocket science. Okay. Not everybody is able to sort of, pull it off, to be honest. Okay. Because the inventory interaction that you were talking about, that for POS to OMS, typically you probably don't need to be real time. But when you talk about the micro fulfillment, you probably need to be near real time,
Right.
because you are committing for the inventory. And if the inventory is not going to be there, then your customer is not going to be happy because they are driving,
Right.
30 minutes, fuel cost, whatever. They are going to be so mad when they are going to walk at the store. And Mark, please don't ask me. I'm not going to be there, okay, as the cashier or the customer service rep. Okay, I'm not going to be at the store. So the second thing that I would like to mention is one of the layers that you had mentioned is the fashion. Okay, fashion, apparel, micro fulfillment, rocket science. The reason why it is rocket science is, okay, you mentioned 15 to 14. In case of hammer, you are buying a hammer. Who cares?
Right.
Okay, but when you are buying a dress, okay, you are better off if I'm asking for a small size, you give me a small size, or you are in trouble, Mark. Okay,
Right.
so it gets extremely challenging in the fashion and apparel space. So how do you see this working? And if you have any sort of examples of the fashion and apparel, because you need to be near real accurate, I guess, in terms of the inventory visibility across the channels if you want the micro fulfillment to work in those spaces.
Absolutely. So a customer of ours in the fashion retail space, Route 21, they really want to drive customers into their stores because they find that they find something else they like and they want to buy that too, right?
Yeah.
But what was critical for Route 21 to accomplish was high availability of inventory data out of their POS. But more importantly, Sam, it was, how do I examine retail store operations so that I know that the data that I'm presenting in a highly available form is actually accurate? And so store operations got involved very significantly in the design of this project. And that included things like evaluating how they do cycle counting, how they enforce cycle counting, how quickly they can feed cycle counting back into inventory master with POS, and how quickly that can get out to Kibo so that we can provide an omni-channel ATP picture available to promise ATP to not only the web, but also to other stores who might be wanting to create an endless aisle experience. Ship from one store, pick up in another, or ship from a store, delivery to home. So it is not just about making the inventory available and providing the means or the mechanism to be able to purchase it, but it's also, how do I evaluate store operations so that I can really kind of make sure or up the level of my level of confidence in the accuracy of the what we have there. Now in fashion, it's very, very important because you have multiple sizes or variants, right, of a particular dress or a particular shirt or pair of shoes or something. Think about the number of variants in shoes or something to that effect, right? We've got, here's a product, right, and this is going to come in multiple colors and in multiple sizes. And what we have to be able to do here is understand the SKU at the color and the size variant, have that be highly accurate, and have that translate back into a variant level inventory feed from the POS, either centralized in RMS or back office and then sent to us, or we can take it directly from the POS.
Okay, amazing example. Thank you so much, Mark, for that. So I'm going to touch quickly on some of the comments that we have in the audience. And if you have anything that you might want to address,
sure,
obviously feel free. So we have Mohammed Sheikh. Please follow him. It's Mohamed. The last name is Sheikh. And Mohammed is asking exactly managing product variance with their real-time quantity. Exactly what I was thinking. Good question, Sam. So he's agreeing with me. Mark, any insight on this comment by any chance?
Just a full agreement there. I mean, that's what we're talking about, is that, variant level. And We have some customers who have maybe 5 or 6 different kinds of variants on a single SKU as well, right? And so the combinations of those variants working together can be in the hundreds. And we have to be able to track inventory at the individual variant, and there needs to be really, really strong accuracy of that variant in order to be informing inventory ATP, which means that you need to have things like either RFID or scanning of UPCs or other things of that nature to make sure that we're not mistaking an M on a tag for an S on a tag.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much, Mark. So we have some more comments here. Larry is commenting again. Larry, thanks Sam for the mention in listening thus so far. Looking through the examples in the website, recognizable brands are advertised. Obviously, Kibo is in the enterprise space likely. It's a massive, massive platform in general. I don't know how many mid-market customers you have. Mark, maybe you want to touch on that a little bit. But for the most part, the way the platform is positioned, it's really for those massive workloads, okay? They are going to have very different needs overall from the volume perspective, from the capacity workload perspective, the number of SKUs they are going to be supporting, the number of transactions they are going to be supporting. Mark, anything you want to add there?
Yeah, I would just say that, the way that we kind of define ourselves is complex commerce that needs to be simplified. Not simplified in the fact that we need to dumb it down. Running complex commerce shouldn't have to be that hard. And so we provide really, really strong tools to be able to reach and exceed complex use cases for complex commerce. We provide a simplified and easy means for them to be able to do it. We serve both the mid-market and the enterprise space. If I talk to 10 different people, they would define enterprise 10 different ways, right? Whether that be a gross merchandise value tier that they're selling overall or in an online channel, things of that nature. So the way that I like to talk about it is less around, is it mid-market, is it upper mid-market, is it enterprise, and more, how complex is your catalog? How complex are your inventory nodes? How complex are you wanting to get with how you are making a decision for allocation against demand? If those things are complex, you need an enterprise tool like Kibo to be able to help you accomplish that and bring some added simplicity to your business because you have complex use cases to be able to support. So from mid-market all the way to enterprise, the beauty of our architecture that I showed you a little bit earlier is the fact that we can be deployed extremely lightweight, and so we can and very rapidly. So we are a great fit for mid-market that aspires to be enterprise as well, because they're on a path and a journey. They want to buy the right architecture now to be able to get inserted in the right way so that it is capable of adapting with them with very low headache and overhead as they become more enterprise. So hyper-growth brands, hyper-growth retail is a great fit for us.
Okay, amazing. And Larry is asking a question that I typically like to ask. So thank you so much for reading my mind, Larry. And the question is, and I'm actually going to rephrase that question, and that is going to actually touch on your comment, Mark. So what Larry is asking, okay, what sort of organizations would not be a fit for Kibo? I'm going to rephrase that, okay? And I am going to ask you, Mark, what are the 5 deals that you have turned down in last quarter because you felt that this is probably going to be a terrible fit and the customer didn't know what they were doing? They were asking for Kibo, they just didn't realize how much heavy lifting is it going to be required. And the other thing that I want you to touch on is the mid-market, okay? What is mid-market for you? For some people, mid-market is $1 billion. For some people, mid-market is $1 million. So if you want to define the mid-market as well as this comment.
Yeah. So I'll try to remember all the questions that you asked me there. And if I forget one, then remind me of it.
Yep.
But I'll start with the last one. So we define mid-market from a digital commerce perspective, or the amount of revenue that would be going through channels that we would support. Those that you need to think through the lens of a digital commerce experience. And that would typically be somewhere between 100 million and 500 million in digital commerce revenue. That's not brick and mortar for retailers. That's not, total GMV for the business. That's the way that we generally think about mid-market, is 1 to 500. And we're a great fit for those there that have, complex or simple needs that they know that they're going to need to get more complex or have the right architecture. So who are we not a great fit for? Well, one of the things that plagues a lot of vendors in the market is they try to be everything to everybody. And they get into trouble doing that, right? Because it may look good on the outside, but once you get into implementation and it doesn't really do everything you need it to do, well, that's because they weren't actually that to begin with. And so you got to know who you are. Well, we turn down deals where it is very heavily focused in transportation management, right?
Okay.
We're not a TMS. We work really, really well with TMS. And lots of TMS RFPs come out with order management components within them, and so they end up sending them out to OMSs too, if that makes sense. So we're not a TMS. We generally don't chase those deals unless it is mostly OMS with a little bit of TMS stuff, right? Transportation management. We are also not I talked about the fact that we have fulfillment. We haven't explored our capabilities. We probably won't have time to really dig into that on this session today, but maybe in a future quarter. We have really, really strong order fulfillment capabilities, but we're not a WMS, right? So if we're looking for things that would typically come with a WMS, that's not going to be necessarily a great fit for us. I'm talking more through the technology, piece part components of an ecosystem, and I'll switch in just a second to thinking about that from the type of a business rather than what they're looking for. And lastly, we're not going to be able to bring a really strong full-fledged POS or RMS. We work really, really well with them. We can provide lots of really good underlying services in a headless fashion that the POS can use. But we personally are not invested in the user experience and managing operations in the store like a POS or RMS would be. So we don't technically we don't often run into diving into those, I should say. Now, from a buyer standpoint, what types of businesses are we good for? Our sweet spot is retail and brands. We provide good solutions to others. But typically, if you are a distributor that does not have any type of a need for any type of a digital selling component, and what you really need is logistics, and you need some inventory, we're probably not going to be the best fit for you. We could support you, but probably not going to be the best fit compared to other things you can get in the market. So probably not necessarily always the best fit for distributors, unless they have some needs that might be a little bit unique that our capabilities are well matched to. And then in terms of verticals, in transparency, we are on our way to being able to support perishable goods. So if you think about grocery, we are expanding into grocery. There's a lot of interest in grocery and combining online and offline channels for that. And one of the things that's on our roadmap that we'll get to talk about in a future installment of this series is expiration of inventory and shelf life of things, and how that comes into play in consideration when we're providing an ATP picture and doing allocation. And you have to understand inventory at the individual unit level, not necessarily at the quantity SKU location level, right? Individual units and what might be unique, like an expiration date on that inventory. So we are headed towards grocery. We're not currently in grocery, specifically because of shelf life of products.
Yeah, and that could be very tricky to deal with, to be honest. So thank you so much for clarifying that. So now, Mark, we have 10 minutes, and it's probably not going to be fun for you to do a little demo, but we want to make sure that we are able to give at least some sort of teaser to our audience so that they are able to see and feel. And I don't think we have time to cover all of the comments, so I'm actually going to stop that. But in 5 minutes, do you want to touch on at least some screens and talk about some of the points that we have discussed so far?
Absolutely, I'd be happy to. And I'm going to kind of use Ace Hardware as the muse and the basis for that use case that we were just talking about to sort of explore a little bit of the platform there. I would like to point out that our documentation is public. Any of the listeners here today can go to docs.kibocommerce.com. A lot of the people we compete with, they're scared to publish their documentation because it's either not good or it will reveal how limited they actually are, and what they say they can support, they can't actually support. So our documentation is public, as is our public API. Either one of those, the more technically minded can go and have a look at anytime they'd like. We even publish release notes, so you can see exactly what we've been working on and what we've developed. All right. With that said, I'm going to talk about how we empowered and enabled Ace Hardware to provide this hyper-localized experience online, how we brought together inventory, and how we can understand how we can promise specific goods at a specific date at a specific place. And we're going to take a look at our unified administrative console that helps business users and technical users accomplish that. We're looking at a dashboard here, and I'm going to first go and understand the fact that there are locations of various types that we need to be able to understand. Ace Hardware has dropshippers, they have distributors of their own, they have retail stores. They are even considering putting things like lockers, like a digital location inside of a location, right? So an order management system needs to be able to understand every single physical or digital location, and let's call it a node, in order to be able to support that. Kibo supports that out of the box. Everything you're going to see here is completely out of the box, no custom development required. If a location is set up, we need to understand things about it. So Kibo comes with an extensive data schema that allows you to define anything you might want to about a location or a customer or an order or a product, things of that nature. So we're going to set up attributes in here that are going to be probably pulled in and populated from some of the back office system, but it needs to be seen and used in real time, which is why it's important for it to be here, because ERP's not, if that changes, ERP's not going to be able to provide that in a highly performant way in real-time fashion. Not necessarily. Maybe the most modern of ERPs might, but those that have been around for some time, that's a struggle for them. So what Ace Hardware did is they set up their location types, they added their locations inside of here, they manage their locations inside of here in order to provide that hyper-localized experience. And then what they do is they manage their inventory from inside of here from an ATP perspective across all of their locations. So that we're getting feeds from POS, we're getting feeds from WMS, we're getting feeds from other drop shippers and whatnot. And then all of that can be understood here in real time. This is a visualization of exactly what the API returns. It returns it straight to us in the same way that it would return it to any system that was asking for it. We can understand current ATP, which is available here in this column, against what's on hand, allocated, safety stock at the location, inventory floor network-wide, even inventory velocity, so that we can use that as a consideration point. All commingled here and all highly available. We also take it a step deeper and say, well, we can also allow Ace to segment their inventory or digitally segment their inventory for a particular purpose. Reserve a certain proportion of inventory for this versus that. That's important for Ace because maybe they want to reserve a certain proportion of inventory for their B2B buyers or for others that are in their buying groups, not necessarily just local contractors. So once we have locations understood, inventory understood, then what we do is we route that inventory, or we provide order routing rules, if you will, that allows the business to define situations or scenarios that allows them to decide how they would allocate the inventory for any type of a scenario. We can do that at the site, channel, or catalog level. So the way that Ace does it is, hey, if they're placing an order for somebody in a call center, we might want to route that order automatically a little bit differently than if somebody's placing the order on the POS, or if somebody's placing the order on our website, or if somebody is uploading a massive B2B order in an EDI type of a fashion. We want to route those things a little bit differently. We're going to use this engine to be able to come in and set up rules, define the scenarios, and set up rules for that particular channel around what we would want to consider and why. And so we have this concept of a filter that defines the scenario, that then we pull in some locations and prioritize them automatically based on a number of different criteria that you might want to enter, and then have some what we call after actions on the other side of that really allow you to decide if you're going to allow splitting for this particular scenario, as macro or micro as the scenarios you might want to make it, right? Maybe in this case, we want to look at stores within 10 miles first. And if we found a partial match there, maybe we don't want to split it for this particular scenario. So look for a match in the next group. We're going to go down. The message here, Sam, and to the audience is really that the business should be empowered. The business users should be empowered to be able to respond and react to what's happening in the business without reliance on dev and IT resources and no coding.
Yeah.
Every single bit of this is user interface based. We empower the business to do that.
Okay, amazing. Thank you so much for the demo. And I don't know if you are going to have anything else to show. We can look at that, but we have only 5 minutes, and we want to make sure that we are giving them the teaser in terms of what you are going to bring in the next session, which is probably going to happen in a quarter, right? So I know you provided a little bit that you are probably going to be working on the grocery segment. So I don't know if that is the roadmap that you guys are working on. So do you want to provide overall, what are you working on as of today? What you are
Sure.
going to work probably in the next quarter?
Yeah. So, our product roadmap for this year is really exciting. And we don't want to over reveal what we're working on, but we also want to give people well, we do to customers, but we don't necessarily want to always do that to the broadcasted world.
Yeah.
And so what I'll leave this audience with as a teaser for next time is, yes, I already mentioned enhancing inventory to be able to consider attributes at the unit level, things like an expiration date of a gallon of milk, as an example.
Yeah.
So we are enhancing inventory. We're also this year enhancing and infusing. We're enhancing order routing and other aspects of order management with artificial intelligence and machine learning, so that we can provide the ability for the engine to be able to tune itself within parameters that would be set by the business, so that it can react to trends that it's starting to see, like how quickly a store is actually responding to a shipment that it's been given. It needs to get delivered. It needs to get shipped out. If that takes 5 hours in this store and takes 2 hours in that store, and we're seeing a trend there, then have the engine automatically shift the rules to the stores that are more highly performant, as an example. That's just one example. We're also working on AI and ML that can be helping inform the planning systems, because we're not an inventory planning system, but we're very valuable to an inventory planning system, because we know everything that there is to know about the performance of the fulfillment and how and where and when and why something was fulfilled in the way that it was. And so we are bridging that gap to a greater extent this year. And then let's see what else. We are enhancing our B2B capabilities as well. So one of the things we didn't talk about on the B2B side of the house, in order to have B2B commerce, you have to have quotes, right?
Yep.
I don't know how you do it if you don't have quotes. So you have to be able to have quotes. We are enhancing the quoting engine, adding more capabilities there, and are building in greater degrees of account mapping and account management into B2B accounts as well. Some really exciting stuff. That's just the tip of the iceberg. There's actually a lot more.
Okay, amazing. So now we have 2 minutes, and maybe we can touch on one more comment, and then I am going to have some closing comments, and obviously you are probably going to have that as well. So one of the key questions that always bothers me, and I think Dave is reading my mind again, which is, how do you reconcile the inventory? And that's always the trickiest part. The way I like to think about inventory, Mark, is, everybody sort of has their own bucket of apple, and everybody is saying that my bucket of apple is the source of truth. So in this architecture, I guess you guys are already tied to your e-commerce plus your OMS, so you are not going to have another bucket there. But POS is probably going to have its own bucket. ERP is going to have its own bucket, and they are sort of fighting with each other. So how do you reconcile that discrepancy, Mark?
Yeah. So I think this kind of comes back to philosophy around who is the inventory master. And I want to be very clear that Kibo is not trying to be the inventory master here. It's not necessarily our job. Our job is the inventory available to promise master, if you will, which is making decisions based on real-time inventory data, or as real-time as we can get it, and providing a very consistent, reliable promise of the inventory. How are discrepancies reconciled against systems? Well, there has to be an inventory master. If you are if you're a slave to multiple masters, even in life, like that can be very problematic for you. And so centralization of data is critical, and defining where the master actually is, and not pretending that there are multiple masters is probably step one. A longer discussion around that we're not going to be able to get to today, but I would say that that's probably first and foremost number one.
Okay, amazing. So obviously, we can only cover so much in an hour, and that's why we are going to come back in the next quarter, and we are going to be building on this. Mark, any closing comments that you might have? Super short.
What I'll leave you with is this. Commerce tomorrow is going to look different than commerce today. We are on an extremely rapidly changing roller coaster of customer experience and modernization of technology. And you can't afford to decide to evaluate how you can do a better job at offering really, really great customer experiences to next year or the year after, because they develop their loyalties and they will go with long-term contracts with those that they feel like are delivering on the best customer experience. And so don't put it off. You need to evaluate it now, how you can perfect it.
Awesome, guys. So that's it for today. And next week, we are coming back with this series. And this is not going to be every week. We are doing either Monday or Friday noon. So next week, we are bringing Sage. And we are going to be talking about the same topic from the mid-market perspective a little bit. So it's going to be really fun. On that note, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in today. And if you joined for the first time, this was part of the quarterly update series in which we are going to be bringing one vendor and we are going to be looking at their product as well as product roadmap. On that note, thanks everybody for joining in today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mark.
I cannot thank our guests enough for coming on the show, for sharing their knowledge and journey. I always pick up learnings from our guests, and hopefully you learned something new today. If you want to learn more about Mark or Kibo, head over to kibocommerce.com. It's KIBOCOMMERCE.com. Links and more information will also be available in the show notes. Also, don't forget to subscribe and spread the word among folks with similar backgrounds. If you have any questions or comments about the show, please review and rate us on your favorite podcasting platform or DM me on any social channels. I'll try my best to respond personally and make sure you get help. Thank you, and I hope to catch you on the next episode of the WBS Podcast.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the WBS Podcast. Be sure to subscribe on your favorite podcasting platform so you never miss an episode. For more information on growth strategies for SMBs using ERP and digital transformation, check out our community at WBS.rocks. We'll see you next time.